Heating up.
Now or never.
If you can't get your heart rate up to that, you don't deserve to be in a race car.
One race to go. Only 12 will make it.
Now or never.
I'm good enough to survive and get there.
Now or never.
You know, always get those opportunities, and you may never. There'll be a little bit more pushing and shoving, and I think you can expect the unexpected.
Now or never.
It's time for Xfinity Series final practice from the Chicagoland Speedway. Big race tomorrow, the final race for the regular season. Cup Series guys are starting their playoffs here. Xfinity Series teams have one race to make it into the 2017 playoffs. Marty Snyder, Steve Letarte joining you for this final practice session. And here are the championship playoff standings heading into the final race for the regular season. William Byron obviously locked in with 3 wins, but what we're going to focus on this weekend, the cut line. Brendan Gaughan, Dakota Armstrong, 25 points separate them. Can Dakota Armstrong get up there and make his way into the playoffs? The man who was fastest in the first practice session today was Brandon Jones. He's standing by with Parker Klingerman.
Right, Marty, and he will need most likely a win to get in those playoffs. But you're fastest in the first practice. How does that bode for the race tomorrow?
Yeah, that makes us happy for sure. You know, we haven't had just a ton of speed all year long. We've been right in the contention where we need to be. Just need to get a little bit of lady luck on our side. But ran the ARCA race last night, finished third in it, so I got some laps on this track. I know right where I need to be for the race. We just got to be able to put it together on the race car here and make some stuff happen.
And it's been a tough season for you, admittedly. You guys have not had things go your way. What is a successful end to the regular season if you are not able to get that win?
A win eventually, I think, is going to be a successful end of the year. You know, even if we don't get it today and make the playoffs, we still have so many races to go and so many races to try to get ourselves a win or at least a top 3, top 5 position. So we're going to work our way up to it, but that's going to be our overall goal here at the very end of the year.
All right, and what do we focus on in this final practice right now? You said you're going to go back to your original set of tires from first practice and then switch to new ones later. What are you trying to achieve?
Yeah, we're going to try to get the car just a little bit more balanced out here for the final practice. Started on our mock set, you know, at the very end of the practice, went back to our 13-lap tires for this one. So we'll see what we got on old tires. That's kind of what we're going to try to make the car work for and see what we got here early on.
All right, Marty, well, they're trying to make this thing work on old tires, which a lot of these teams are going to have to do as we get this practice underway.
Hey, Parker, as cars hit the racetrack, I hear it's awfully warm. I mean, it's a beautiful day here at Joliet, Illinois, but I hear it's awfully warm down there in the garage area, correct?
It is actually very warm. I've actually been getting a little bit of sunburn down here and not expecting that here today. But the one thing about that, Marty, is that as they go out there on the racetrack, you see them start to lay down that rubber as we've had the Cup Series earlier today and then their first practice and now this second practice. Is this track is just going to continually lose grip as that rubber gets laid down, as those seams that you see Ryan Blaney run over there right above the top lane or the bottom lane. That's the sort of thing that's just going to lose grip and make it tougher for these teams as the tires lose grip to really assess where their race car's at.
Good point, Parker. And so, Steve, it's been a warm day here at Chicago. We'll see these drivers kind of cooling off in the garage area earlier, trying to get some air to them. What do you want your driver to do in this final practice session? Because it's a different racetrack when it's hot and slick like this.
Well, it's definitely a different racetrack, and grip is of a premium. It's already a struggle here at Chicago in this old asphalt, been around since 2001, to find, I guess, a good balance between comfort and handling. And I expect a lot of these drivers are going to run multiple laps trying to get long into a tire run to see which direction their handling goes as the tires age.
Elliott Sadler will be slimed later, by the way. You want some slime for you? We can cue it up, Stevie, if you want some slime.
I mean, I'm all for a good, entertaining show, but I'm not sure if slime is the best answer.
Bubba Wallace in the 98 this weekend. He has our helmet cam. What an incredible view this is. So not only hot and slick like we just talked about, Steve, this is one of the bumpiest racetracks these teams will go to all year long.
It is. 1 and 2 is somewhat reasonable. That's the end of the racetrack at Darrell Wallace.
Wait. You call that bump reasonable?
That's reasonable, but that's kind of on corner entry. Doesn't affect the handling as much as down here in 3 and 4. It's all relative. So as he goes down this very unique kind of turning back straightaway, so that's right, a straightaway that's not straight. Watch as he turns down into 3. The bumps are right in the middle of this corner, right through here. You see the helmet move, and that's the same place that they're trying to get on the throttle, which I think makes it even more difficult. You see him look up, check the mirror, and onto the front stretch he goes.
They don't seem to end through 3 and 4. Like there's one after the other after the other.
And that's what happens. You get into the first one. As you mentioned, the bump getting into turn 1 is big. It's very severe, but there's just one. You you kind of cross over, and then you're back to a normal racetrack. Where 3 and 4, it's like going over consecutive sets of railroad tracks so bad that I guess Darrell Wallace Jr. doesn't want to do it again. He's coming in. But how your car handles over the first one, you know, if it bounces your car loose or tight, it's going to continue to bounce that direction through the entire corner.
The tough part, Elliott Sadler heading to the garage as well, that Jeff and I were talking about in the first practice session, is that that's literally a 4-foot section of racetrack that you're making adjustments around that you have to deal with for the rest of the mile-and-a-half racetrack.
We talk about compromise a lot. Sometimes you go to a racetrack where their corners are so different that you compromise to be good in one versus the other. I mean, here at Chicago, there's two major compromises. One is, how does the car drive on those new tires versus the old tires that we talk about with tire fall off, versus the next big compromise is, how good do you want to be over the bumps versus not. You can make a car drive good over the bumps, very comfortable, but will it be fast? Normally, the better it rides over the bumps, the slower it is.
Xfinity Series final practice continuing from Chicagoland in moments. Right now, Cole Custer, the fastest car on the track. One breaking news, race highlights, updated standings, and more delivered to your inbox every week. Never miss a story or a race highlight by subscribing to the official newsletter of NASCAR. Visit NASCAR.com/newsletter to get signed up today. By the way, it was Bubba Wallace who was going to get slimed.
I like your idea. I think we just slime them all.
I volunteered you, Stevie. We had a brief red flag. You might have seen that on the app with Jeff Green being stopped on the racetrack. And we mentioned the weather, Steve. While it is beautiful, as you know, it is quite warm. 87 degrees here at Chicagoland, and that makes it a handful for you, doesn't it, Mr. Crew Chief?
It's a little practice for next year when this race moves back to the middle of the summer, because to your point, you know, this race in this time of the schedule, it's normally a little bit cooler. 87 is warm. But, hey, they're athletes. We'll let them go out there and sweat a little bit.
They are indeed that. Right, Parker? You're an athlete, so you can handle the heat in the garage area?
Yeah, sort of, I guess.
That didn't sound so confident, Parker.
I'm really kind of sweaty at this time right now. But one guy that definitely is an athlete is that driver right there, Ryan Blaney, driving the 22 Discount Tire Ford this weekend. I saw an amazing stat as we came in here, guys, and that is his average finish in the Xfinity Series this year is a 2.29 in 7 starts. And he actually is approaching possibly getting the best average finish of any driver ever. It's done at least 4 starts in the Xfinity Series, which is Mark Martin back in 2000, who had a 2.15 average finish. So just incredible what he's done in the Xfinity Series this year, and obviously very quick in this practice. And I think many think if you're going to win this race tomorrow, you're going to have to beat that guy.
You know, Ryan's going to get a lot of reps here in these final few races because Brad Keselowski won't be in the 22 car. You're going to see less Joey Logano in the 22 car because they are in the playoffs. They're going to focus on that, Steve. So some of these teams have been kind of scrambling to find drivers to get into these race cars in the final few races of the season.
Well, when you look at these Xfinity programs that are owned by Monster Energy Cup Series teams like Penske is, you know, they can use their Cup Series drivers to a certain limit. And then at some point they have to put younger drivers in it. And while I think Ryan Blaney is looking forward for the laps, looking forward to running the extra laps, I'm not sure he wants to do it for the next 10 weeks. I mean, you think it's just next week in Kentucky when the series are in 2 different locations, they're going to have to figure something out as well.
Sam Hornish will be in that 22 car next week. And here's Chicagoland, right, Steve? You got Justin Allgaier on the bottom, and you got Brendan Gaughan trying the top of the racetrack.
And it's not even a good bet to say that the 62 will run the top of the racetrack. It's almost guaranteed money because that's where he likes to run. He's found so much success running up there. I remember back to the truck days around the top of Texas. But this is how you run the top. You heard him lift real early, but back to the gas before the 7. You have to make the straightaway longer, and that's what he's done. That's why you're going to continue to see him gain on the 7. Now the 7 will probably drive away, going to the bottom of the racetrack as he's doing right here. Now the 62 back to the gas, and he should continue to close the gap down the front stretch. That's kind of the accordion from top to bottom.
Do you like your driver practicing up there? Would you rather him kind of work on the bottom and get the car right?
Well, I think you need to be able to go either place, and Brendan Gaughan probably plans to run up here a majority of the day. So, and now he's way
high
over the last pavement scene. But look how much better that's going to work. Is, you know, you won't see a lot of guys in the middle of the track. Like, you have to commit. You're either going to run the bottom or the top. So I'm okay with Brendan running the top, but I will suggest when you go back out for whatever we change, hey, run a couple laps around the bottom. Let's make sure we haven't eliminated the bottom as an option.
So if you're Shane Wilson, Brendan Gaughan's crew chief, you're plus 25 coming in the weekend. How do you approach the weekend? Are you conservative? Do you play it easy? Or how do you approach this final race of the regular season? Because honestly, you're more in protection mode than anything else, correct?
You are in protection mode, but you got to remember, Dakota Armstrong, for him to gain those 25 points, he's going to have to run well outside of what his average finish is this year. And while that's absolutely possible, the truth is, the 62 and Brendan Gaughan, I think, needs to be looking forward to the playoffs, thinking, how can we be more competitive to truly run for this championship? It's not been the year that Brendan has been hoping for. He self-admittedly would say that. So I don't think wasting a weekend being in protection mode is really the 62's goal here. I think it needs to be, hey, look, it's an old wore-out mile and a half. Testing is very difficult. Let's see if we can learn. Miami is off in the distance. Perhaps we can learn something here that if we're fortunate enough to make Miami, we could take down there in South Florida that old pavement and have a better chance to win a championship.
Hey, Steve, as we watch the 62 of Brendan Gaughan go around that top lane and the 7 of Justin Allgaier be on the bottom lane, I sit here questioning that move because we know Brendan Gaughan loves the top lane, right? That's where he loves to go. And I think when you talk to a lot of drivers and a lot of teams, they know that top lane is available. They know where there isn't rubber, there's going to be grip. So you can go there at some point in the race if there isn't a bunch of cars up there and make time. And so they therefore work on the bottom. I know Kyle Larson talked about this last practice. So as a crew chief, are you looking at this thinking, okay, great, we're running up top, we're making lap time, but what are we learning? Because we know that's going to be there. How is this car going to be on the bottom? Or are you thinking that's where my driver wants to be? I'm just going to let him do it, and we'll make it work up there.
Well, some of the issue is, you know, we talk about the bumps here at Chicago, where the majority of the big bumps on 3 and 4 are at the bottom. So sometimes on old tires, it's worth going out and running the top just to check your frame heights and your splitter height.
And one thing that we saw on the in-car camera there, in the exit of every corner, you saw Brendan reaching over to the right. What's he doing, Steve?
Well, I would assume what Brendan's doing here is you're allowed to have mechanical valves that will open or close the NACA duct, which is basically just a duct in the right side that allows air in. It changes the aero balance on the race car. So the two ends of the racetrack here at Chicago do drive very differently. So at one end of the racetrack, you want that duct open. At the other end, you want it closed. That's one way. We talk about the adjustable track bar in the Cup Series. So you see, you reached over, close the valve or open the valve. It's hard for me to say which position it's in here. Now he's at the other end of the racetrack. These are turns 1 and 2. He'll exit turn 2. You hear him playing with the throttle, get on the straightaway, then he'll reach over, and he's coming in. He's off the gas here. And he'll put the valve in the opposite direction. So it's just one more way crew chiefs give the drivers tools to try to make the car handle as best it can in both ends of the racetrack.
And part of being that veteran as well, knowing what to do with those tools when you have it. Brendan Gaughan right now, 14 fastest. Top 10, though, there they are. Cole Custer, the fastest so far in Chicago. This weekend, it's a NASCAR doubleheader in Chicagoland. Tomorrow, the Xfinity Series takes to the high-speed mile-and-a-half track at 3:30 Eastern on NBCSN. Then Sunday at 3 Eastern, it's the first race of the Monster Energy Cup Series playoffs on NBCSN. We're under a red flag right now for Matt Mills, who gets into the wall right here, Steve.
Yeah, that's a pretty heavy contact as well. We talked about how difficult this racetrack can be. Well, you know, if you are trying to run the top, there's just not a lot of room, and you see the 15 is already into the wall early in the corner right in front of Brennan Poole there. I'm sure that's getting Brennan's attention.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. The 20-year-old out of Lynchburg, Virginia, just his third Xfinity Series race of 2017. So running the top can be treacherous at times, can't it, Steve? But something that you have to do in practice.
Well, yeah, I mean, even as disappointing it's going to be to damage this race car right here, you know, that's going to be almost impossible to fix during the race. So we'll have to see if they have a backup, perhaps not. Perhaps they're going to try to repair this one. We'll just have to follow up on the repairs as the practice continues.
As you see his third career Xfinity Series start. Parker?
Well, guys, you guys were talking about what Brendan Gaughan was doing in that race car with his right hand. So I wanted to show you that mechanical valve. So if you look right there, you might be able to zoom in. You're going to see that little switch. That is what he was moving on that right front NACA duct. It connects to two hoses in the right front NACA, and he was able to adjust that, obviously, as you said, Steve, to basically shut it off and force the air out or whatever. I'm not exactly an aerodynamicist, so I'm not sure what he was attempting to do with it. I'm going to let you explain that, but that is the actual valve you were talking about.
Well, basically, it's simple. You see that duct on the window. As the air flows through that, that changes the balance of the car. So as you close those ducts, it can tighten the car up. As you open the ducts and free it up, or vice versa, depending on what wind tunnel you go to and what aero platform you want to believe. But all you need to know is that it changes the balance of the race car if air flows through those or not. And Brendan Gaughan using it as a tool to try to make the two ends more symmetrical, we'll say, or at least drive the same, which I'm surprised. 87 degrees. If I was Brendan, I probably would just put up with it and leave it wide open. Leave some
right,
cool air.
Get some cool air in there.
Yeah, but I like, hey, listen, I'm going to give Brendan credit, though. Tell Brendan, tell his whole team, he's using it. We proved it on the in-car. So when you always question, are they really using all their tools? He was using it.
So if you had a young driver, would you even put that tool in the race car to allow them to use it?
Absolutely. I think anyone that's made it to this level of racing, not giving those drivers, young, old, veteran, experienced, or inexperienced, those tools is a disadvantage. I mean, how can you race against Brendan Gaughan if he has something you don't? I mean, I think it's unfair. I think you have to explain to your driver how it works, and you can't assume that they don't have enough experience to use it. You would assume they know if they're busy enough not to reach over. But, you know, it's just one more way to try to make your car competitive.
And sometimes you'll see drivers playing with the brake fans and things like that per corner, per lap, every time they can go into every corner.
Oh, yeah, we had audio from the first practice on the Cup side. Jimmy Johnson was, you know, describing his first qualifying run, and he talked about 3 and 4 coming to the green, 1 and 2. He used his tools on the back stretch, and this is how, you know, drove again in 3 and 4. So that was just qualifying, and he planned on adjusting things during the lap.
You know, the interesting thing this red flag creates is this traffic jam at the end of pit road. It's going to be, if you don't know how your car is going to be in traffic, you're about to find out right now.
So we get that question a lot, you know, why don't we see more cars running in traffic? Well, you have to remember as we look at the bubble drivers here at Chicagoland, Michael Annett, Brendan Gaughan, both currently in, Dakota Armstrong doing the chasing, 25 points back. But practice is multi kind of faceted. The idea is to go out and work on your car. So the first thing you probably need to do is go out, run by yourself. Is it loose? Is it tight? Make changes. But then you need to go back out and run by yourself to see if the changes worked. Then you don't mind going to run in traffic to see if there's something you can work on. But the truth is, it's hard to adjust things that are only going to affect traffic, if not impossible. So at this point, I would be frustrated if our car was going to go out and run in all this traffic if we had a change that we were trying to compare to the run before.
Obviously, the track is open. I would argue this is the perfect time because they only have, for most of these teams, they do, the rookies do have an extra set of tires, but for most of these teams, they only have 2 sets of tires to work with. So they're probably towards the end of that first set of tires they had to work with from the beginning of the day. So now you're going to be in traffic, and now you're going to be in old tires. You're going to get a real feel of what the race is going to be like tomorrow right now.
Yeah, it is, as long as you have it built in your plan to not need balance from this run as we ride with Eric Jones. There's the top that you talked about. Another driver committed the top. That was coming to kind of take the green here. We'll see if he continues to run the top when we go to 1 and 2. But traffic is going to be a battle. But one thing about Chicago that we love is the multiple grooves that we continue to talk about, as now Eric Jones goes to the bottom, is if the car you're running is running the top, you can run the bottom or vice versa.
On the Cup Series side of the ledger, certainly has been a lot of success for the 77 team, who Eric Jones drives for. So I wonder if these Xfinity Series races, because he's going to get a number of them here towards the end of the year, are only going to help that side of the garage.
Well, I think at this point, you know, even though Eric Jones is extremely talented, I mean, Kyle Busch claims that running an Xfinity Series helps him for lap time. So going off that as the standard, it's got to help Eric Jones this early in his career to just continue to run laps.
No doubt about it. A 2-time winner in the Xfinity Series so far in 2017. A lot of people in the garage area, Steve, feel like Elliott Sadler, the man they may have to beat to win this championship. What do you think?
When you look at the playoff standings, I do look at Elliott Sadler as perhaps he's really my favorite. I think that he understands how to points race. He understands how to work through the different rounds. So how about this? I'm willing to put him in Miami without a problem.
Okay.
But what we have seen is Miami is one race for the big trophy, and there's a lot of opportunity. I mean, last year at the Cup level, Jimmy Johnson self-admittedly would tell you he wasn't the best car that day, but he was the best when it mattered at the end. I think that's the same thing. I think that's how all these teams have to approach it. The goal right now needs to be to make Miami. There's no guarantees when you make Miami. You have to make Miami first, and I think Elliott Sadler, with his experience, I think when the playoffs reset and start next week, I have this one car of Elliott Sadler definitely making it all the way to the finale.
You know, Kevin Mendring, his crew chief, told me earlier today, we're honestly worried every weekend, obviously, and we want to win every weekend, but we are truly focused on Kansas, Texas, Phoenix, Miami. Those are the 4 racetracks we're spending 80% of our time right now worrying about how we get better at those racetracks.
And if that's the case, you could look at this racetrack as a little bit of a preamble to Miami. It used to be Texas and Miami. Now they've repaved Texas, so it's kind of a standout. It's nothing like this anymore. But Miami, if, that is the most important race of the year if you're in those final 4 drivers. So this weekend is probably the best test. Even better, perhaps, than going to Miami and testing. Because while you're at the correct racetrack, testing can be very difficult. The track conditions change. You just talked about traffic. Well, the other advantage of being here this weekend is everyone is trying to win. So it's much easier to see where you stack up. When you go there to test, you never know what kind of effort is being put in versus just following a test plan.
7th fastest so far for Elliott Sadler, who, by the way, is our 2017 regular season champion here in the Xfinity Series.
The Xfinity Series regular season champion.
We want redemption. We want that championship. We were so close last year, and we want to put ourselves in that situation again, redeem ourselves, and win that championship.
Beautiful downtown Chicago. Of course, you can catch NASCAR America 5 p.m. weekdays. And boy, Steve, is it a big week for NASCAR America this week? Obviously, Monday we'll be recapping all that happens here at Chicago. But Tuesday, check that out. Tony Stewart's going to be in our Stanford studio.
Yeah, we've drugged Smoke off the dirt track. Got him out here to talk to him. It's going to be great. And then Eric Jones on Wednesday from the Hall of Fame. I'll be joining Eric. It'll be great to talk about, you mentioned, running all these different races on both sides of the garage. And then Thursday, we get to preview race 2 of the round of 16 at New Hampshire.
Yeah, we have fun on the Hall of Fame shows, don't we? We get a little insight on the drivers. It's fun.
I know it's hard to believe, but sitting around telling stories is right up my alley. I enjoy those shows.
But what I'm really excited for is Smoke being there Tuesday. I mean, I just love his perspective now. I saw him at Darlington. He was in shorts out on pit road. I'm like, this is awesome. To see you out in shorts out here watching Kevin Harvick's pit stop and make sure everything goes okay. So,
look, I love the relaxed nature, but I don't know if I've ever called Tony Stewart in shorts awesome.
Well, yeah, it's cool to see him that relaxed.
I
put it in that perspective.
I knew what you mean. No, you're absolutely right. I ran into him at Indianapolis. I was with my wife and kids. We were going to the concert they had on Saturday night, and we rode down there, and here came Smoke in on a golf cart, and he just was chit-chatting away about racing, owning teams. He looked like he was truly having a great time.
Yeah, he's relaxed. That's why that was my point.
Hey, listen, whatever you say.
As we watch Michael Annett firmly in the playoffs, 11th in the playoff seedings right now. So, by the way, who was at that concert Saturday? Who was playing that concert Saturday night?
Oh, you're gonna put
People
me on
can know how hip you are.
Well, my kids drug me to it because it's nobody I would know. It was you can't put me on the spot like that. Who was it? It was DNCE was the day before.
Yeah.
Chainsmokers.
Chainsmokers. There you go. I knew you'd pull it out. See, you're so hip, Steve.
Hey, that's what happens when you have an 11 and a 13-year-old.
There you go. Michael Annett in the playoffs, as we just mentioned a moment ago. Now, we kind of joked that it's good to have teammates in the playoffs. Burton, he said, or is it? I don't know.
I'm the opposite.
My mind.
So on the Cup side, I think it's a benefit for Brad Keselowski that Joey Logano missed.
Because they can test for them or what?
No, because then all of the effort for Penske should be on Brad Keselowski to win a championship. I mean, while we think these teams are just endless and they have endless resources, that isn't the case, and they have to be divvied up. And I think it's fair to say that you're going to put your effort into the car that still has a chance to win a championship. So when you look at whether it's the Junior Motorsports that perhaps are going to put all 4 cars in there, or the 48 of Brendan Poole, you know, as these bigger organizations grow and come up with these game plans, I think it's, if you have the resources to run multiple cars, yet you only have a select number of your cars running for a championship, I think it's an advantage to that car because they can have more of the resources.
Well, and imagine for Brendan Poole, you know, he's got Kyle Larson helping him out. Now, I did talk with the team earlier today, and they think maybe 2 to 3 more races for Kyle Larson. But nonetheless, Kyle will be in 2 to 3 more races. That's a huge help for Brendan Poole.
It is. Now, in this case, Kyle Larson might keep Brendan Poole out of victory lane because I think Kyle Larson is going to be one of the cars to chase. But I do think that having Kyle Larson to come into the debrief, well, my car did this, I tried this shock package, it did that, you said this about this change, I said that. He can continue to try to help a young driver like Brendan Poole trying to understand, you know, it's very difficult to practice at this track with as rough as it is and as much as the tires fall off. And you see Larson, you know, doing double duty. There's a lot of numbers on there, a lot of wins, a lot of top fives, a great average finish. So, you know, swept both races at Auto Club, which even though that's a 2-mile track, surface-wise, I think is very close to here. You know, I think it is an advantage. But remember, that's because Larson's not running for a championship.
What about that right there? I mean, Brendan Poole's pulling in now, but he followed him for about 4 or 5 laps. Can they come in and go, hey, I was following you and you were doing this?
Absolutely. Kyle Larson, even at his age and how many races he's run, is a NASCAR superstar, has proven that he has the feel at these types of racetracks. It might be something as simple as, Brandon, there's a paving scene getting into try staying over it a foot longer, a foot before, turn in a little earlier. Whatever he might say, hey, you were driving in too deep to run the top. Whatever information he gives him can be invaluable to a driver trying to learn.
Parker's in the garage area hanging out with Daniel Hemrick, I believe.
Not with him, but I'm going to talk about him, and I think it goes back to all the variables you were just talking about, Steve, that these drivers and teams are up against here at this racetrack. But there's one we haven't discussed that he got into on his radio.
1 and 2 was better. I just got really loose into 3. Like, I think that'd be way worse in the race. Pretty good wind pushing it down into 3 as well. 1 and 2, we hold our own.
And it is the wind. We have not talked about that, but as I look at all the flags on top of these haulers around here, there is a significant gust. And, Steve, I think you've run this. I think of a racetrack like Kansas being one of the worst tracks for that, where you get that large tailwind into Turn 3 that can really push you and unsettle the race car. But just another little variable they're dealing with down here.
Well, Turn 3 is already probably the easiest corner to overdrive, and it sounds simple, but one of the things that the drivers do, remember, they don't have a speedometer, so they kind of sense speed. And with a tailwind, the noise is a little less on the race car. The car itself has less downforce because as the wind speed is with you, it's not pushing down on the car. So I think that makes the entry to Turn 3 even easier to overdrive.
About 19 minutes left in final practice for the Xfinity Series here at Chicagoland. The JGR cars have jumped to the top of the charts. Eric Jones fastest, Daniel Suarez, his teammate, second.
NBCSN brings you 3 big races on one day, from F1 Spectacular Night Race to the first NASCAR playoff race to the IndyCar Championship. Don't miss a second of the action. Sunday on NBCSN.
Boy, that is going to be fun. The night race at Singapore is amazing, but this is, other than Chicago, what I'm really excited about. Double points on the line at Sonoma for the IndyCar Series, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really focused on the top 2. You have Newgarden, right? 4 wins, 3 of those at a road course. He has the points lead, but with those double points, I'm not sure 3 points is anything to sleep on when you have Scott Dixon, a 4-time champion behind you, not to mention a 3-time Sonoma winner. I mean, that's a lot of pressure.
Well, and Newgarden's kind of beating himself up for what happened at Watkins Glen, kind of ran into the pit wall exit, just ruined his chance. I mean, he had probably the best car and ruined his chance and really closed up that points gap. And with double points on the line, and his teammate Elio Castroneves having never won a championship, there's going to be a lot of interesting storylines Sunday.
Well, and it's kind of like a little preview of what we might see at Miami, right? We still have 2 Cup owners. We have Chip Ganassi and Roger Penske toe-to-toe.
Yeah, and no doubt they'll be there at Sonoma watching it all go down. Blake Koch will be obviously here in Chicago tomorrow in the championship picture. 9th fastest right now for that 11 car. And this is the race team, Steve. You know, Chris Rice was telling me, I called Richmond so conservative. Was kind of a little upset with himself. Wished he would have been a little more aggressive, but in his points position, you really can't blame him. There's not much he can really do.
No, it's a tough position to be in, but teams like Blake Koch in this 11 is the exact reason I am a fan of the playoff picture in the Xfinity Series, because in a standard type season that we had for years, Blake Koch would be on the outside looking in. There'd be no conversation of Blake Koch making a run or even having a chance at a championship. And while I'm not willing to put his odds up there next to Elliott Sadler or perhaps William Byron, I think he absolutely has a chance to continue on through the playoffs, out of the first round, into the second round, and you never know. Take advantage of somebody else's misfortune, be around Chris Rice on top of the box, bringing that veteran, that status, the one that realizes to be conservative when need be, might be the reason that we see this 11 car in Miami.
And for a second-year team, they're looking at making the playoffs for the second straight year as well. Parker?
Oh, guys, something interesting that's gone on down here is the 2 car of Austin Dillon has actually sped on pit road twice during this practice and therefore been forced to do a drive down pit road, essentially like a drive-through in a race. And so I got up on his hauler because I wanted to look at where the garage is in respect to pit road. And so I looked down here, and what occurred to me is that basically Austin sped the first time coming into pit road, right? Just doing a hot pit, trying to get all he could, getting on the pit road to practice for the race tomorrow. But then the second time he actually sped leaving pit road, which there's not a lot of pit road left once you exit the garage. So the team's a little perplexed, but they basically said, hey, bud, just slow down. So that's the moral of the story. He has to slow down on pit road. But a lot of teams just wondering what the heck was going on with all that.
Well, and we saw this a few weeks ago, and I asked NASCAR, I'm like, when do we enforce pit road speed? And they assured me, listen, it's not pit road speed like black and white like the race. It's just reasonable. We expect these cars to go a reasonable pace up and down pit road. There's personnel on pit road. We don't have security keeping people back off from pit wall. The pit walls are open, and there's just no need. There's no need for a team to run 100 miles an hour down pit road. So it was kind of hard to argue with that sense. I said, okay, makes sense.
We saw the 01 of Harrison Rhodes coming down pit road there. He had to go through a drive-through as well. So, and it's really a safety thing, right? You've got crew people down here. You've got fans down here behind the wall. So that's want to make sure you don't have to hit pit road speed, but just be a safe speed.
Well, yeah, because those fans aren't expecting someone to come down pit road at that speed. And we're hearing that the 7 of Justin Allgaier will join the list, the lengthy list of not really paying attention on pit road. As I watch him down the front stretch, he's going to continue to make laps.
Well, and teams do want to do that. You want your driver to run pit road speed to get a feel for it, but NASCAR just saying do it at a reasonable speed, right?
Yeah, and what's different is without the electronic dash, like in the Cup Series, it's old school tachometer for these Xfinity guys. So someone like William Byron here in the 9, he would run pit road speed just to make sure the engine runs smooth. He can go down pit road at a reasonable pace.
Of course, he's coming in. He has 3 wins in the bank. Told me he's really excited actually for the final few races of the playoffs. The ones he's worried about are actually Charlotte, where he feels like they haven't quite run as well, and the repaves. Kentucky, which is the first race of the playoffs, and then Texas as well. See a little race there between the 00 of Cole Custer, 5 Michael Annett.
Cole Custer, another one of those young drivers who I think is looking forward to the points reset. He's definitely going to vault him back up into the chance of a championship conversation at only 19 years old. I think it's also good. We talk about getting these guys back in the playoff picture. I also think it's good for a 19-year-old driver to feel the pressure of the playoffs. You know, while I used to be a fan of the season-long grind and teach them how to race for points for a whole year, if their goal is the Cup Series, I think they need to learn that, look, there's these cut races, there are these 3-race rounds. You have to feel what it's like under the microscope.
And for a young driver like this, if you're Jeff Mendering as crew chief coming into these playoffs, first-year team, reasonable expectations would be what?
I think making the playoffs were reasonable expectations, and I think at this point, somehow Jeff Mendering needs to make Cole Custer understand that we race for a living. This is supposed to be fun. Let's not let the pressure of the situation change what we do. Let's perhaps let the pressure maybe take a front runner off their game. Let's not let it get to us. Maybe Elliott Sadler, William Byron, one of these potential favorites will feel the pressure and make a mistake, and we could be there to capitalize.
Final practice winding down quickly, and let's add Daniel Suarez to the list, Steve. Speeding on pit road, they called him a moment ago. So lots happening here in Chicagoland. Sunday night is football night. The Atlanta Falcons open their new stadium as they host the Green Bay Packers in an NFC Championship rematch on Sunday Night Football. Mike Tirico and Dan Patrick host Football Night in America at 7 Eastern, only on NBC. How'd you do this week at your goal of getting that to be your ringtone?
I didn't get that to be my ringtone, but I am pumped to see. I heard it's going to be good weather in Atlanta, and I hope it is because the roof might be open in the new stadium. That one that, like, circular, it opens, it doesn't slide open. I'm not smart enough to exactly describe how the engineers did it. I just know it's awesome to watch with that big circular screen. It's going to be awesome.
It's fantastic, isn't it? We went to break telling you that Daniel Suarez was the latest to add his name to the list of speeders on pit road. When Justin Allgaier was told about that, here's what he had to say on the radio.
You got to do a pass through for 2 fast on pit road. Okay, I'm not going to challenge it, but literally, I never went faster than 4 miles an hour down pit road. I'm sorry, man. I don't know what else to tell you.
Of all the things I thought we'd be talking about in final practice, speeding on pit road was not one, Steve.
No, this is an interesting dilemma for sure. But I really think what's happening is on pit entry, as we see all of pit road, if you go all the way back to pit entry, where the cars come in off turn 4, they don't break completely for the commitment line. So, they were just going 165 miles an hour. So they slow way down. But unfortunately, slowing way down is like 85 miles an hour. But pit road speed is 45. I don't think NASCAR, well, I know NASCAR is not expecting 45 on the button, but 80 perhaps is a bit ridiculous. And we're starting to hear that's roughly what some of these cars are running.
Jeremy Clements was added to that list as well. So it is tough to slow down from 160 to 45 miles an hour.
Getting off the interstate. You've been running 70. You get off the interstate and you hit that 35 mile an hour surface road. That's always where they want to give you a ticket.
And Steve, I think the weird thing is, for many of these drivers, and I know in my personal experience that I have never been told there's an actual speed on pit road during practice. It's kind of an unwritten thing to say, hey, just, don't go a million miles an hour down through there, but slow your speed down as you come to the spot where you're going to turn in the garage. So I think a lot of these teams are just getting caught off in the fact that I don't think many of them knew that even existed, that you could get caught and put down pit road for speeding during practice.
But I do love Justin Allgaier's approach, which was, okay, I'm not arguing. Okay, because it doesn't matter. Run down pit road, go back out, get back to practice.
Steve, here's a race team that has really picked it up in the second half of the season. Daniel Hemrick, and I was talking to Danny Stockman, his crew chief, earlier today, and just going back to these racetracks for a second time, a little more experience, all of that's really played into them being much better in this half of the season.
Yeah, and it's not just speed, it's the decision-making on this 21 car for the restarts. I see Daniel, you're going to laugh at this term, but being cautiously aggressive, like putting his car in position to be aggressive and to take a position, but a relatively guaranteed position. Not something that's a coin flip whether you're going to come out the other end. A position that should be safe, hopefully will work out. It's all kind of odds and probability. Well, keep the probability and the odds in your side.
Well, it's funny, we talked about that, and he said that's kind of been his main downfall is really the restarts. But you can't practice that anywhere. You got to do it in the race, and that's the only shot you get to do it. He said the only thing he's been asking Daniel to do is that they have clipped off film for him just of restarts. Watch these restarts. Watch what you've done. Watch the decisions you've made and how they've helped or hurt you.
Yeah, because I've had this argument with some of the best drivers, Jeff Gordon-Dale Jr., and when you talk about a restart and what happened, they're like, well, that's not what happened. And you're like, well, yeah, and you got to remember, they only have a windshield and a rear window. They can't see 4 cars behind them. So sometimes you have to show them the whole picture for them to learn.
Closing in quickly on the end of practice here. Eric Jones still fastest. Woo, even loose there. Xfinity Series final practice here from the Chicagoland Speedway. Eric Jones still the fastest. Bubba Wallace with our helmet cam this weekend, letting Ty Dillon slip by there, showing the folks at home just how bumpy this racetrack is, Steve.
Well, and if you think this shot is great right here in practice, wait until we show it tomorrow in a race on the restart when he's about 5 or 6 rows. You're going to see how clogged and crowded these corners can be.
But as we've talked about, Chicagoland gives you options, which is going to make helmet cam very interesting. You're checking the mirror there for a long time, isn't he?
Yeah, so this helmet is this camera is mounted on the helmet just above the visor. So this is really the line of sight that you're seeing. So I think it's even a nervous twitch. I'm not even sure drivers know anymore. So he comes up on the straightaway, kind of gets his stuff, go up, check the mirror one time, back to the window. And the reason I say it's a nervous twitch, because I literally have seen drivers check the mirror on qualifying laps when they know no one's running them down from behind, but it's just something you do all the time.
Well, what he was looking at was Brendan Gaughan was right behind him, and now he peeled off, and Ryan Reed's pretty far back there. But this is a fun racetrack, isn't it? And now you want your driver doing this long run to close out final practice here.
Yeah, and, well, right here he's going to practice coming on pit road, which is a great idea. We talked about speeding on pit road. Well, today it's no big deal.
Too much. Back that up a car lane.
There you heard. Too much. Back that up a car lane.
50. We'll try to get her again here.
So they're going to go out, run it one more time. And what drivers do is find a mark, either on the wall, on the racetrack, and the spotter perhaps. Some drivers like to do it on their own. Other drivers like to be counted. All right, you're going to be at your mark 5, 4, 3, 2, and at 1 you lift and you start applying the brake. The only way you know that is to practice a couple times.
And Elliott Sadler, we talked about all the drivers being busted for speeding on pit road. He was just busted a moment ago for speeding on pit road. Red and black flags are out. Well, let's ride on with Bubba as he tries this one more time.
Yeah, it's going to be a little difficult now because these cars in front of him might also be coming to pit road now that the red and black are out, but he's going to probably give it one more shot. As he enters turn 3, you see a car on the apron. I think he still could buy him no problem.
Pushing as if this were...
Oh, he's going to run an extra lap to hopefully let traffic come out, which you're allowed to come to the checkered.
Yep.
Got to be careful. If you run too much, they will definitely not be happy. Now he's down in turn 1, and traffic seems to be clearing out a little bit. We'll see if he makes it a run to pit road right here.
Right behind him, William Byron doing the same exact thing.
Nothing behind you, running it all. Dig all the way around there, 39.50. I'll get you at the spot. 39.50. Keep coming here.
What a good perspective, Steve.
There.
So there was not pit road speed. That's where he wants him to lift. And that yellow line is pit road speed.
That's pretty cool stuff, isn't it? And it seems like they hit it right that time.
It's cool if it goes right.
It's cool if it goes right. When it doesn't, it's not good. Here's the playoff standings entering Chicagoland, the final race of the regular season for the Xfinity Series. And that's what we're going to be watching all day tomorrow, Steve. Can Dakota Armstrong make up those 25 points over Brendan Gaughan?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a tall task. 25 points is, 25 positions. It could be a mix, some in the stages, some at the finish of the race. But, it's going to be difficult to try to make it up in one race.
No doubt about it. He did finish ahead of Brendan Gaughan last week, but did not gain points on that 62. Well, coming up next on NBCSN, it's IndyCar Series practice from Sonoma. Big weekend for those guys. Double points on the line. Can Joseph Newgarden win the championship? 6:30 Eastern is Monster Energy Cup Series qualifying from Chicagoland. That's all for Xfinity Series practice. Eric Jones, fastest here at Chicagoland.